Hey guys, and welcome back to another Access 72 video, and in today's video I'm back with another Sport This Week video. That sounds a bit weird saying that, although I didn't mean to say it like that. But yeah, if you're on around here and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, starting off, I'm going to start off with the tennis news, and so it was the continuation of the finals of Fort Worth, where Swiatek lost 2-1 versus Sabalenka. Garcia won 2-0 versus Sabalenka to win the women's singles finals Fort Worth. Badoza won 2-1 versus Rybakina, and this was the start of the Billie Jean King Cup. Badoza and Zadionov won 2-0 versus Danila versus Putintseva. Badoza lost 2-0 versus Dart. Switzerland won 2-0 versus Australia to win the Billie Jean King Cup. And it was also the ATP Turin finals, where Nadal lost 2-0 versus Fritz, and that will be continued on next week. Moving on to the basketball news now. Heat lost 110-107 versus Blazers. Celtics won 109-106 versus Grizzlies. Warriors won 116-113 versus Kings. Lakers lost 139-116 versus Jazz. Celtics won 128-112 versus Pistons. Lakers lost 114-101 versus Clippers. Heat lost 117-112 versus Hornets. Celtics won 131-112 versus Nuggets. Warriors won 106-101 versus Cavaliers. Lakers lost 120-114 versus Kings. Celtics won 117-108 versus Pistons, and Heat won 132-115 versus Hornets. And that is all the basketball news. Moving on to the rugby news now. Ireland won 35-17 versus Fiji. Italy won 28-27 versus Australia. Samoa won 27-26 versus England. England won 52-13 versus Japan. Wales won 20-13 versus Argentina. France won 30-26 versus South Africa, and New Zealand won 31-23 versus Scotland. And that is all the rugby news. Moving on to the ice hockey news now. Maple Leafs lost 4-3 versus Knights. Canadians won 3-2 versus Red Wings. Canadians won 5-2 versus Canucks. Bruins won 3-1 versus Flames. Red Wings lost 8-0 versus Rangers. Maple Leafs lost 4-2 versus Penguins. Canadians won 5-4 versus Penguins. Bruins won 3-1 versus Sabres. Maple Leafs won 3-2 versus Canucks. Red Wings lost 4-3 versus Kings, and Bruins won 5-2 versus Canucks. And that is all the ice hockey news. Moving on to the NFL news now. Chiefs won 20-17 versus Titans. Buccaneers won 21-16 versus Seahawks. Chiefs won 27-17 versus Jaguars. Dolphins won 39-17 versus Browns. Colts part ways with Reach, and so Saturday was named the interim head coach. Packers won 31-28 versus Cowboys, and Rams lost 27-17 versus Cardinals. And that is all the NFL news. Moving on to the football news now. Hasenhüttl has been sacked. It was the Champions League round of 16 draw, where Leipzig versus Man City, Bruges versus Benfica, Liverpool versus Real Madrid, Milan versus Spurs, Frankfurt versus Napoli, Dortmund versus Chelsea, Inter versus Porto, and PSG versus Bayern are the games. It was also the Europa League round 16 draw. Barcelona versus Man U, Juventus versus Nantes, Sporting versus Midtjylland, Shakhtar versus Rennes, Ajax versus Union Berlin, Leverkusen versus Monaco, Sevilla versus PSV, and Salzburg versus Roma were the games. And it was also the Conference League draw. And so Qarabag versus Ghent, Trabzonspor versus Basel, Lazio versus Cluj, Bodo Glimt versus Lech Poznan, Braga versus Fiorentina, Larnaca versus Dnipro, Sheriff versus Partizan, and Ludogorets versus Anderlecht. And that is all the draw news. Carrying on with the football news still now though. Bayern won 6-1 versus Bremen. Wolfsburg won 2-0 versus Dortmund. Leicester won 3-0 versus Newport. Bournemouth won 4-1 versus Everton. Gillingham won 6-5 on penalties after drawing 1-1 versus Brentford. Sassuolo drew 1-1 versus Roma. Sociedad won 2-1 versus Sevilla. Brighton won 3-1 versus Arsenal. Forest won 2-0 versus Spurs. Wolves won 1-0 versus Leeds. Newcastle won 3-2 Pens after drawing 0-0 versus Palace. Man City won 2-0 versus Chelsea. Southampton won 6-5 versus after drawing 1-1 versus Sheffield Wednesday. Blackburn won 10-9 on pens after drawing 2-2 versus West Ham. Liverpool won 3-2 on pens after drawing 0-0 versus Derby. Jones is the new Southampton manager. Southgate is named as England squad with Pope, White, Gallagher, Rashford and Wilson all included for the World Cup. Man U won 4-2 versus Villa. Almiron won goal of the month. Almiron won player of the month. Howe won manager of the month. Kepa won save of the month. Mönchengladbach won 4-2 versus Dortmund. Bournemouth won 3-0 versus Fulham. Liverpool won 3-1 versus Southampton. Forest won 1-0 versus Palace. Spurs won 4-3 versus Leeds. Leicester won 2-0 versus West Ham. Brentford won 2-1 versus Man City. Arsenal won 2-0 versus Wolves. Newcastle won 1-0 versus Chelsea. Man U won 2-1 versus Fulham. Villa won 2-1 versus Brighton. Milan won 2-1 versus Fiorentina. Inter won 3-2 versus Atalanta. Juventus won 3-0 versus Lazio. And Marseille won 3-2 versus Monaco. And that is all of the football news. Moving on to the cricket news now, where there's only a little bit of news this week, but a big bit of news. Pakistan won by 7 wickets versus New Zealand. England won by 10 wickets versus India, and England won by 5 wickets versus Pakistan to win the men's T20 World Cup. And so big congratulations to England bringing the cup home. Moving on to the boxing news now though. Azim has signed a long-term contract with boxer. Harris versus Cernaj, Thanders versus Kiss, Mackenzie, Chalmers, Marksby, Laws and Barker Porter, who we have luckily had on the channel, will all be fighting on the 2nd of December, so best of luck to Barker Porter. Docherty has retired. Johnson will fight on the 10th of December. Silva has joined Golden Boy. Masood won via TK in round 12 versus Bateson to become WBA Intercontinental Super Bantamweight Champion, which is an unfortunate loss for Bateson, but I'm sure he'll be bouncing back stronger and getting back to them titles shortly. Edwards won via unanimous decision versus Alvarado to remain IBF World Flyweight Champion, and so, I didn't get the Bateson prediction right. I did get the Edwards prediction right. Yumbi won via TK in round 2 versus Strakowski. Noakes won via decision versus Alexandro. Fale won via points versus Grant. Khan won via points versus Taylor. Adelaide won via K in round 2 versus Garcia. Hutchinson won via TK in round 7 versus Spadakini. Ball won via TK in round 1 versus Rubio to remain WBC Silver Featherweight Champion. Smith won via points versus Arrowsmith. Ellison won via points versus Chima, which yet again was an unfortunate loss for Chima, but Ellison is a very tough opponent for anybody, and like Bateson, I'm sure he will bounce back stronger. Killiganon won via points versus Mwakenya. Riley won via TK in round 3 versus McGuigan. Clark won via points versus Sokolovsky. Denny won via unanimous decision versus Ray to remain English middleweight champion, which is some good news for somebody who I've interviewed getting a win. Denny, a big win, impressive performance and keeping the title. Smith won via unanimous decision versus Benjamin to remain British super lightweight champion. Jonas won via unanimous decision versus Decare to become IBF, WBC and WBO World Super Welterweight Champion. Ferreira won via unanimous decision versus Cardozo. Ko won via unanimous decision versus Olmeida. Suchaniashvili won via stoppage in round 3 versus Rodriguez. Williams won via unanimous decision versus Ford. Matisse won via unanimous decision versus Tapia to become a WBC Continental America's Super Featherweight Champion. Ford won via KO in round 8 versus Lucas to remain WBA Continental America's Featherweight Champion. Hitchens won via stoppage in round 8 versus Alamo to become IBF North American Super Lightweight Champion. Spark won via disqualification in round 6 versus Love to become WBA Intercontinental Super Lightweight Champion, which is a big win for Spark, and big congratulations to him. Obviously it was via disqualification, which I don't know if that was deserved, but I don't know if that would be the ideal thing for Spark. But I looked at the scorecards, and to say that Spark was losing that fight is very unfair to say, because he was doing very well in that fight and was frustrating Love. And the comments Eddie Hearn made about the stoppage being early, I don't believe was the case, because it was a deserved disqualification for what he was doing. And a big congratulations to Spark. Maybe they'll rematch, maybe he'll move on to even bigger things. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, big congratulations to him. Johnson has retired. Hatton vs Barrera ended in a no contest, but it was great to see Hatton back in the ring again. And unfortunately I didn't get the prediction right, but it was great to see him back in the ring. Metcalf versus Pennington, Price, French versus Jackson, Bostan, Dixon, Oregon, and Wright will fight on the 10th of December. Ryan will fight Sanchez on the 26th of November. Martinez versus Corona, Pacheco versus Hereford, Velasquez versus Rosalo will fight on the 3rd of December. Estrada won via unanimous decision versus Villarino to remain WBA World Minimum Weight Champion, which I did predict right. Alim Knalnulli won via unanimous decision versus Bentley to remain WBO World Middleweight Champion, which I also did predict right. And Mayweather won by TKO in round 6 versus Deji, which I didn't predict right. But fair play to Deji. I mean, he managed to give him a black eye, and he gave an alright account for himself. But Mayweather, of course, showed his class and showed his ability, even at his age, is still crazy. And so fair enough to Mayweather getting the win. It's nice to see that he's not just drifting through these exhibition fights, and he's actually is trying to an extent to try and get these opponents out. Even though, I don't know if it was an early stoppage or not really. But yeah, that is all your boxing news. Moving on to the UFC news. Makhachev will fight Volkanovski on the 12th of February, which is a fight which I'm very much excited for, and I'll very much be trying to tune in for that. Blanchfield won by a submission in round 1 versus McCann. Spann won by a KO in round 1 versus Reyes. Moicano won by a submission in round 1 versus Riddell. Hooker won by a KO in round 2 versus Puelles. Gutierrez won by a KO in round 1 versus Edgar. Edgar has retired. Poirier won by a submission in round 3 versus Chandler, which I did predict Poirier to win. Weili won by a submission in round 2 versus Esparza to become women's strawweight champion, which I did also predict right. And Pereira won by KO in round 5 versus Adesanya to become middleweight champion, which I didn't predict right. But I mean, fair play to Pereira for getting a big win for his career. And I mean, I don't know if they'll do an instant rematch. I would like to see that, but we'll have to wait and see. It could go to Whittaker if they want to do something a bit different and bring him back into the equation. And Rodriguez will fight Emmett on the 11th of February. And that is all the UFC news. Moving on to the final sport, which is the F1 news now. It was a Brazil Grand Prix. Russell was on pole, Hamilton started second, and Verstappen started third. In the end, Russell won, Hamilton came second, and Sainz came third, with Norris, Magnussen, and Ricciardo not finishing. And yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.